Good day. It's really good to be with you all. Sorry it's not in person, but it's nice to be on a digital platform and connecting that way. I am currently in Dublin, Ireland, and April has very kindly invited me to join the conversation and to share some thoughts around asset mapping. My name is Cormac Russell, and I am, along with April, a fellow member of the ABCD Institute at DePaul University in Chicago. And as I'm sure you will all know, we have a reach now across the world. So I take some responsibility for being the director of European process. And as I say, I'm here in Dublin, Ireland today. I head for Chicago tomorrow morning. I've had the pleasure of reviewing many of the inspiring, really, missions that each of you have decided to take responsibility for in terms of being in right relationship with the communities you serve. So to an extent, because my time is quite limited, I have about a little over 5 minutes to speak with you. I'm going to very quickly move into the core content. I want to speak about asset mapping and how we can use it in a way to ensure that we achieve authentic relationships and empowering relationships with citizens and with core partners who are practitioners in serving citizens to work together and to create the kinds of outcomes that you are hoping for in the various projects that you've been funded to initiate. So asset mapping, one of the first things I want to say about asset mapping is that I think as a method, as a tool, like any tool, it must be understood in the context of what it can't do as well as what it can do, its limits. Just in the same way that you wouldn't use a tin opener to chop down a tree or an axe to open a tin of beans, we have to be very thoughtful about what it is that the tool of asset mapping is really for. So we can say, and indeed what it's not for. So we can say that it's not for making lists. I've often encountered people who have done asset mapping and created these most elaborate pictures of what they feel are the assets in the community. Often they've done it to the community rather than enable the community to do it themselves. They create either on digital platforms or through artistic means or 3D. They create representations of what they have identified as assets. And then they say to me, but nothing has changed. And the reason nothing changes when you do asset mapping, if you do it that way, is because an asset map is not an action step, nor is an asset map a list. It is really something that is, when it's done dynamically, a method for enabling people to be in more powerful relationship with each other and to connect things that they didn't previously recognize were there and therefore were disconnected. Because what that does is it gives people clarity around what has previously been invisible. It makes the invisible visible to the people who are going to do the work of building community. That's why it's not a good idea to do asset maps to people or for people. The trick with asset mapping is to create the conditions within which the people who are going to do the civic work are the people who created the map. All that means that if you're going to start asset mapping, it's wise to start asset mapping with learning conversations. Start with the question, what do you care about in relation to our efforts? What is it that you feel is important? What keeps you awake at night? What matters? When we start the question, what matters to you that you'll contribute to doing some work around, then we can sit down and have a follow-on conversation, which is, where are the resources that will enable you to take what it is you care about or you're concerned about into some measurable action with the neighbors and with key partners? So one of the things that's really important to recognize with asset mapping, if you build it on the back of learning conversations is that you're not just engaging with people so that you can get them to engage with your service, but you're engaging with people so that they're more civically empowered, that they're flexing civic muscle, and that they're working in more effective partnership. You know, not all assets are created equal. Some assets are very definitely unequal. Now, I often think of assets at three levels. So you have primary assets, which are local and are within the influence of local citizens. Now, I mean citizens in the sense of the people who sleep in neighborhoods, who walk in neighborhoods, who work in neighborhoods perhaps. And I don't mean work in the sense of they fly in and they fly out, but they're actually embedded and invested in the cultural, the economic, and the associational life of that living place called the neighborhood. So primary assets are the first level of assets that you will see in a really good asset mapping process. The second, as you'd anticipate, are called secondary assets. And these are assets that are local, but for various reasons have fallen outside the influence of local people. These assets could be a school that is closed 6 months of the year, has all kinds of resources that would enable the community to be more vibrant, to be more active, perhaps to be able to meet. But for various reasons, the asset is not a community asset, it's an institutional asset. So it's being used solely and purely to do the endeavors and the mission of the institution, which is fine. But it's failing, if you like, to recognize the potential and the possibility of also doing the work of supporting the community. The final asset's an external asset. It is neither local nor within community control. External assets could be funding. It could be assets and resources at federal government level. They're important, but they're not within community's influence and they're not proximate to the community. Good asset mapping enables the community to say, here are the things we can do and use to start to operationalize what we care about. They're local, they're primary assets. Here's some things that are local, but we need to have difficult conversations to unlock the potential of their utility, their usefulness. And here are things that are external. They're neither local to us nor in our control. And in time, we will get to them. But let's start with the primary assets. That's what the potential of asset mapping does when it is done well. The final thought on this is I've had the pleasure of working in Leeds City Council with the library service. And what they've really learned to do is get beyond community engagement and to move into a process of working with local residents and with people who serve local residents to begin to say, how do we understand your primary resources when it comes to our mission and support you by enabling you to tap into the resources that we have. They've gone through a wonderful asset mapping process, which has been truly transformative in terms of the relationships that they have with local residents. But what's been beautiful is when the local residents have had to sit with different agencies and partners and say, here are things we need you to do for us. They sit with them with the pride that comes from saying, we're having this conversation with you, having also released our primary and secondary assets. So we sit with you as equals. We've done what we can do as citizens. We've done some things in partnership with other agencies, but now here are the services that by right of citizenship we need and require. And that equity of partnership, that equity of conversation is so important, I think, in terms of social justice. So in summary, I would say that asset mapping, when done well, creates three shifts. It shifts the conversation from content to contact. It shifts the conversation from delivery of a predefined service to discovery of what's great and what's possible in the local context. And finally, it shifts us from a focus on what's wrong to a focus on what's strong and how we can use what's strong collectively to address our challenges and to create a more equitable and just society. It's been a pleasure to be with you. I wish you well in your work. And remember, as you do the asset mapping, the key thing is to keep it relational. Thank you.